Now that we've set up our projects directory SharePoint list, the third step is to set up the columns. If we go back to the upper right-hand corner here to our site settings, we want to go back to site administration and site libraries and lists, back to customize projects directory. If you scroll down a little bit, you'll see a section here called columns. SharePoint, by default, provides you with 5 columns here. They're available to use or not to use. What we're going to do is create our own columns, and I'm going to create the 7 columns that are in our sample SharePoint list. They're fairly easy to create, and you're going to see how quickly we can create them. I'm going to click on Create Column, and our first column name is called Project ID. Then we need to assign a data type, and in this case, we're going to use a single line of text. For each column, you have something called a description text box here. It's entirely up to you if you want to provide a description for each column. There's additional information here. All of our columns in the SharePoint list is not considered required, so I'm just going to leave the values the way they are. And I'm just going to scroll down and click OK. I'm going to scroll back down. You can see that our project ID column here has been created. I'm going to go ahead now and create the next 6 columns. Our second column is the person's name. Again, single line of text. I'm not going to change any of the values here. I'm just going to click OK. Repeat the process, create column. Our third column is called status, and the data type is actually a choice, which means if you scroll down that we need to enter choices. So what I'm going to do is enter our 2 choices, which is approved and not approved. We're going to display this as a drop-down menu, and we're not going to allow any fill-in choices, and I'm going to hit OK. Our fourth column is the project end date, and we're going to call it end date. And here we're going to choose the data type as date and time. When you choose that as the data type, you're going to get additional information here. We only want to display the date, and the standard format is fine for our purposes. We're going to hit OK. Our fifth column is called disposition date. This is the column that's going to auto-calculate our disposition date. So when you select calculated as the data type, what you're going to do is see a box here called formula. I've copied and pasted a formula here, which I'm going to do right here. This is one of the 4 formulas that I've provided in the job aid. You have the option of typing the formula in or just copying and pasting the formula. If you decide to type the formula, you just have to make sure that you're going to get the syntax correct. If the syntax is incorrect by the time you try to save this, SharePoint will tell you that there is something wrong. If you do not enter a formula here in this box, SharePoint will not allow you to save this column. So whenever you create a column that's calculated, make sure that you have the formula ready to paste into this box. For the data type return, we do want the date and time because this is the disposition date, and we do just want it displayed as date only. It is fine. We do not need the date and the time. We hit OK. We'll move on to our 6th column, which is the destruction date. This, similar to the end date, we're just going to choose date and time because this is a a date that the users will manually enter. We're going to leave all of the other information alone and hit OK. Our seventh and last column is called legal hold. And for this, we are going to choose the yes/no checkbox data type. And when you choose that, SharePoint is asking you if you want any of these to be the default value, and in this case, we're going to choose no. The reason is when projects come in, the majority of them in the very beginning will not be on legal hold. We're going to hit OK. And you can see here that our 7 columns have just been created. You can see the data type here. If for any reason we wanted to make any of our columns a required field, we can do so as we were creating it, and it would show up here. It would be marked here. Now, I'm going to do something very quick here. Title was one of the default columns available through SharePoint. I am just going to click on this and open it up. And this is where we see where you can designate a field or a column to be required. In this case, I'm just going to make this not a required column, and I can explain that later. But it's just for purposes of putting together our SharePoint list. Now when I'm done, I can just go back to projects directory here. And as you can see, our 7 columns are now displayed in our SharePoint list. That title column that I spoke about just a few seconds ago, that is by default displayed in this all items view. In the next portion of the video, we're going to be covering creating views, and when we get to that portion, you can see that I'm going to unselect the title as a column to display, and we're going to be creating our custom views going across this way.